Sheth. Johnson. Trombetta. Calandrino. I'm sorry. Mr. Perkins. Mr. Visconti. Mr. Chinis. Mr. Esposito. Mr. Sadi. Mr. Capo. Mrs. Bastow. Mr. Rosado. Mrs. Gates. Mrs. Teicholz. Mr. Riley. Ms. Saraceno. Mr. Seabury. Ms. Stanley. Ms. Haversack.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make known that Councilwoman Parasat is still out on medical leave. On couch. I am. Councilwoman Teicholz is still out on medical leave.
Let the record reflect that there are 20 present, one absent. The purpose of tonight's meeting is the police pension revision, section 14-49, section 14-52, section 14-54, and section 14-55. Item 2 is parade and public assemblies, section 11-15 to 11-34. Item number 3 is littering regulations, section 11A-1 to 11A-6. Item 4 is news racks, vending displays, section 11B-01 to 11B-15. Number 5 is citations, section 12-34. Number 6 is appointment, membership, and terms, Charles Ives Authority for the Performing Arts, section 13A-58. And number 7 will be government entities, add Charles Ives Authority, section 2-176, section C. Meeting will be 7 p.m. Monday, April 23rd, 2007, in the third floor County Council Chambers, City Hall, 155 Deer Hill Avenue. Members of the County Council will meet as a committee of the whole immediately following the public hearing to take action on the same. I would just notify everyone here tonight that members of the public residing in Danbury or taxpayers in Danbury are allowed to speak only on the issues that are here before us tonight. I would ask that when you come forward, if you would please use the microphone, give the clerk your name and your full address, and speak loud and clear so that we all may hear you. In the public hearing session of this meeting, we listen to your comments, we don't respond. So don't look to us to answer a question. You may make your statements and then proceed on. At that time, we will open the meeting for public speaking. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak?
Giuliano. I live on Skyline Drive, Danbury. I'd like to address the council as a whole. Two of my issues pertaining to tonight's get-together is, one, the parade ordinance. I feel that, 26 doesn't really constitute a get-together parade, something that you need an ordinance to be required. And I can agree with the fact that whoever applies for the parade ordinance should be liable to pay the $100 fee. But when it comes to certain things like illegal immigrants that burden the taxpayers, I don't feel that we should be burdened any more than we are and have to absorb the cost for police protection for them. And I feel that because of the nature of the police department that we do have, that the monies that would go into protecting the people at the parades with taxpayer dollars, I would much rather see those taxpayer dollars be funded somehow be incorporated into the police pension, since these people put their lives on the line for us every day, and more we look to them for help because of the circumstances that are going on in our city. I want to thank the council very much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else wishing to address the council tonight? Mr. Foley?
kind of like walking into a room and seeing an ex-spouse. I know no matter how well things start, by the time the evening's over, we're going to fight about money. It's nice to see that. On April 9th, I sent a certified letter to Corporation Council. I stated our interpretation of City Ordinance 1452 and how we believe it pertains to Article 16.1 of the new police contract. Asking for the city's legal position, I expected a reply in writing. What I received was a phone call inviting me to this meeting to ask questions of Attorney Murray. That is unacceptable. There will be no discussion until we know the city's legal position and we have it in writing. However, tonight, I would like to ask you a question. When police contract negotiations begin, a union official approached me. On a documented date, time, and location, with witnesses present, he told me, the mayor wants to give us a raise which the retirees will not get. Well, section 16.1 of the new contract is precisely that reference. Why, Mayor, was that your intent? It was not to prevent a tax raise as the pension fund is separate. To my knowledge, there was no discussion about the solvency of the 67 pension fund. It appears the real intent reflects poorly on all parties involved in negotiations. I really don't want to go into that. As I represent the retirees who are a bunch of loafers, let me put it this way, Mr. Mayor. We're going to give you a moment. We're going to forget that you made that statement. Let's start over. No penalty, no hard feelings.
Mr. Foley, can I just ask you to address the council, please? Because when you turn that way, we can't hear you.
For the present, we will just deal with the legality of the issue. Our concern is solely the City Ordinance 1452. We urge the common council to tread lightly. It appears serious legal issues are in question here, and any changes might be inappropriate at this time. Should the mayor's plan go forth on channel, there are several consequences. Consider this. A police officer who retired in 2006 would receive a 5% smaller pension than one who retired in 2009. These are officers with the same amount of time in service under the same 67 plan with unequal pension benefits. I never had the pleasure of working for Chief Baker. I certainly know my friend Barry. The mayor feels that the officers working for him are entitled to 5% more. And I wonder what kind of chief he's going to be. Tough. Also consider the fire department pension plan. It is worded similar to the 67 police plan. At another time, with another mayor, a new fire department contract with steps added to negate the fire department's pension escalator clause could also happen. We retirees do not want a long legal battle. We feel strongly that our rights are being compromised. We are determined and we are united.
Is there anyone else that would like to address item number 1?
Daniel Seller, Vice President of Local 891, Michigan. I live in Danbury, for my address,
No problem.
Probably I would never speak tonight, but it appears it's going to be necessary. I'll keep it short. As for, there are several things Mr. Foley brought up, which I can understand his concerns. He worked in the same department I worked in for many more years than I've been there so far. I've only been there 12. I don't know that I'll work as many as he did. I'm not quite that much of a man, I don't think, but you never know. As for comments made by the mayor early on in negotiations, I was in the too. I didn't even see the mayor until maybe a month before the end. As far as who made those comments, I don't know. I wasn't there. It was never my impression that we were trying to deprive anybody of anything that they were entitled to. And it's still my belief, wholeheartedly, that we have not done so. We, the negotiating committee in the city, the retirees will receive a raise annually, as they always have, and they will in the future. This plan does not affect that. As Mr. Foley stated, a person who retires in 2006 will receive a different protection than a person who retires in 2007. That is true. However, the purpose of these negotiations were impact negotiations. That's what they were titled. If you look at the booklets, I should say, that exchanged hands every week or every month, whenever we met, they were titled impact negotiations. The purpose of these negotiations were to address the impacts of the changes to the police department, as brought here by Chief Al Baker from his department in an effort to restructure and improve the police department and its performance in the city. The purpose was to address the changes that would affect the members who currently work in the police department and will continue to work in the police department. Those were the purpose. That was the purpose of the changes to the pension. To basically reward or compensate people who stay and work under the new plan. These people are going to forego opportunities that someone who retired in 2006 did not forego. That person lost no opportunity. I, however, having 12 years on, just as an example, will lose some opportunity. There will be positions that I would have been entitled to under the old plan, the existing plan, which would have been open to me as perhaps an aging officer who was not quite up to going out and fighting the 18-year-olds anymore. This is a young man's game. I don't have the opportunity. A lot of those jobs are going to be civilianized. So there won't be a job for court officer or clerks here, evidence clerks there, various positions around where officers fill those jobs. Usually senior officers who put in their time and finish out their careers behind the desk or doing some other type of less dangerous work. Well, we don't have those opportunities anymore. And this was compensation for them. This was not an intention. There was no intention to take anything from anybody who had already retired, who had already worked in some of those jobs perhaps. There was no ill will. It was just an attempt, and I think a successful one, to address the changes brought here by the new administration to compensate everyone fairly. No one, you still need to put in your time to get the compensation. Compensation is in stages. And it's a modest but fair compensation. Nobody received a windfall. Just walking away with $1 million. Nobody's going to walk away rich. It still happens. Nothing's changed. So that's all I have to say. We believe it's fair. I do speak for the union, I speak for the membership. We believe it was a fair deal at the right time in exchange for the changes that have occurred and will occur.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council on item number 1? Mr. Houseman?
Good evening. I would like to, my name is Ivan Alsame. I reside 2 Midfield Road. This is item number 1, section 1455. Ivan, I-V-O-N, Alsame, A-L-C-I-A. Okay. In the wake of the tragedies of September 11, previous and current school shootings, and international and domestic war against terror constitute the urgency for our community and elected officials to provide the officers of the police department with the necessary tools needed to adequately do their jobs. Mayor Bowden is taking action. However, it is not sufficient. The mayor has made a tremendous effort towards reconstructing the police department, which include purchasing new police cars, state-of-the-art equipment, instead of the art equipment. We appreciate the efforts. But I feel that there is not enough support and advocacy to offer additional benefits and raise the salaries of the police officers. Mayor Boughton can attempt to give the police department everything it needs to increase job efficiency and performance. However, if the officers are not paid decent salaries and receive the best benefit available, the community and our elected officials cannot say that they have the department's best interests at hand. It is absolutely imperative that not only should Danbury have the state-of-the-art police department, but its officers should have the salaries and the benefits they deserve in lieu of September 11 crisis. Post-11, new trainings and additional duties have been forced down their throats with little or no compensation. We need to do the right thing for those who are the one on the front lines to protect our community and loved ones. Now it's time for us to honor them with respect and dignity by giving them the salary and the benefits equivalent to their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council on item 1? Anyone else wishing to address the council on item 1? Anyone else wishing to address the council on item 1? Okay, we're going to close that section of the public hearing and move on to number 2, parade and public assemblies. Is there anyone that wishes to address the council on parade and public assemblies? Mrs. Waller.
Hi, I'm Lynn Waller, 83 Highland Avenue. I'm uncomfortable with the phrase, all costs for police protection shall be borne by the city of Danbury. Did we put the money into the police budget to cover these costs? If so, how much is estimated to be needed in the next year? 2, I see nothing in this ordinance that covers the duration of a parade, meaning the time limit. Can it run for 3 or 4 hours? Spontaneous parades affect many people living in the area with no warning. Kimberly, Danbury Commons, Harrison Square, Park Place, Glen Apartments, all of these places have only one way in or out. A lot of them are seniors. What if they need ambulances or fire trucks? How do you handle this? I saw nothing saying how often a group can march or parade each year. I know you're concerned with free speech, but I feel there can be an abuse of the people of Danbury if they are allowed to have marches more than once a year. The penalties, I don't know if I'm reading it correctly. It's if any person violating the provisions of this section of this article shall be held to a fine not to exceed $100. Does this mean each person in the parade, or does this mean the organizer of the parade will be fined $100 if he has a parade and he doesn't have his ordinance? Personally, I'd like to see it every person in the parade. What I'm concerned about is when the foreign nationals, something goes against them, they seem to come out and parade, and they don't, I mean, it isn't once a year, it isn't Memorial Day, or it isn't Veterans Day, it's whenever the spirit moves them. And I think that's an abuse of the taxpayers, and I'm uncomfortable with the fact that we are being asked to cover the cost of the police protection for this, as well as all the people living down there that are seniors that don't have a way in or out while the parades go down Main Street. Thank you.
Anyone else that wishes to address the council on item number 2? Mr. Alsamay.
Ivan Alsamay, do I have to repeat? Okay, Ivan Alsamay, 2 Midfield Road. I admire what the mayor is doing, and I honor him for what he's doing, because we saw last year the chaotic that the Brazilians brought to downtown. But I want to caution everyone here that foreign nationals, illegals, okay, they are not to blame for America's demise, okay? This is an issue that needs to be addressed, and hopefully that everyone's rights will be protected, and that you will find a reasonable solution to address this issue. But again, let me address this. Foreign nationals and illegal immigrants are not to blame for America's demise. When we look at the issue, look at it as an issue as a whole, and not targeting a certain group of people. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the council on item number 2? Anyone else wishing to address the council on item number 2? Anyone else wishing to address the council on item number 2? Seeing none, we'll move to number 3. News racks and vending displays. Is there anyone that wishes to address the council on news racks and vending displays? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let's go with littering first. Number 3 is littering regulations. I jumped ahead. Is there anyone that wishes to address the council on littering? Anyone wishing to address the council on the ordinance in regards to littering? Is there anyone that wishes to address the council on the ordinance that refers to littering? Seeing none, we will now move on to news racks. Is there anyone that wishes to address the council on news racks and vending displays? Mrs. Waller? You don't have to have a family to do it.
Lynn Waller, 83 Highland Avenue, Danbury, Connecticut. First of all, I have a letter from Margaret Mitchell as a business owner on Main Street. She asked me to read it into the record. If you prefer not, I will hand it to you. If you plan to read it into the record, I will not. It's up to you.
Well, every member of the council has received a copy of that letter. But certainly you're private, if you want to read it.
She asked me to read it in case it wasn't on there, so if you don't have it, that's all that's important. I believe news boxes should only be allowed in commercial zones. Section 11B09, number 10 of the ordinance. Do not allow residential zones, even with the abutting property owner's permission. I just don't think these things belong in residential areas. The racks can be 4 feet high, 2 feet wide, and 2 feet thick. These racks can be attached together to the width of 5 feet along the curb. Not less than 3 feet shall separate each group of news racks. Will these racks be chained together, making accessibility to handicapped people harder to reach the curbside? Will they block the driver's vision? Will pedestrians or even children may have trouble crossing the streets? I had jaywalking down, but just crossing the streets because a lot of us can't walk to the curbs where the crosswalks are. How can the city authorize the use of a sidewalk in front of a business without the business's permission? What if Walgreens wanted to put a box of flyers in front of CVS? If I were CVS, I'd be very unhappy. To finish, I'd like to think that I think news racks are ugly, and I do not think that they will keep Danbury beautiful, just the opposite. I think this ordinance will invite news racks to come to Danbury. For $15, the news rack can buy space in front of a business, while a businessman has to clean up the litter and pay the liability should someone be hurt. Businesses should be held harmless too. I was going to mention the fact that I was leery of snowplows pushing them over on the streets, but I understand that in the ordinance I found that they have to be weighted so that won't happen. I'm not sure that will actually happen because they do, as the snow piles up, they do tip easily. So I'm just against this. I don't think we need as many as it sounds like this is going to occur. So I'd rather not see it. Our downtown needs to stay beautiful, and I don't think news racks are the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swan. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council on item number 4?
Thank you, Mr. Cabo. Mark Bowden, 23 Allen Avenue, Danbury, Connecticut. I just wanted to address the issue of the news racks. The point and the intent of the ordinance is not to invite more news racks. It's to regulate the news racks that are already sprouting up throughout the city. In fact, it's almost like they're having babies and there's some sort of procreation happening that we're not aware of. And one only needs to go look at the corner of West Street and Main Street where there's about 5 of them chained around a pole. And we have no mechanism now to go and pick those up, remove them, ask the owner of the rack to take it back. Our Director of Public Works has no mechanism to promote and protect the city right away on the sidewalk. We have no mechanism to stop news racks from being knocked over by plows, which is something Ms. Twall just mentioned she doesn't like to see. We have no authority right now to regulate these at all. So the reality is we have a free-for-all, if you will, going on our city sidewalks related to vending machines and news racks. The key component to this ordinance is that the Director of Public Works has the discretion to deny somebody a permit and say you can't put it there because you're blocking the sidewalk, because you're forcing people to jaywalk, because when we're plowing, we keep pushing snow up on there and it's inaccessible. So that's the intent of this ordinance. In fact, it's been modeled on a similar ordinance that Middletown, Connecticut has. I simply invite the council to go to Middletown, look at how neat their streets are with the news racks and how organized it is. And I think it's time we brought some order to really what has become a system that is just out of control because there is no system. So, Mr. Chairman, I would urge adoption of the ordinance. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on item number 4? Anyone else wishing to speak to the council on item number 4? Or anyone else wishing to speak to the council on item number 4? Seeing none, we'll move to item 5, citations. Is there anyone wishing to address the council on citations? Is there anyone before us tonight wishing to address the council on citations? Is there anyone present wishing to address the council on citations? Seeing none, we'll move to number 6, appointment of membership and terms, Charles Authority for the Performing Arts. Is there anyone wishing to address the council on item number 6? Anyone wishing to address the council on item number 6? Anyone wishing to address the council on item number 6? Seeing none, we'll move to item number 7. Is there anyone wishing to address the council on item number 7, which is government entities, adding the Charles Ives Authority? Is there anyone wishing to address the council on item number 7? Anyone wishing to address the council on item number 7? Seeing none? Mrs. Basso?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Seabury. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Public hearing is now closed. We will now open up the meeting of the Committee of the Whole, and I would ask the clerk to call the roll again. McMahon?
Present.
Andershed? Johnson? Trombetta? Calendrino? Perkins? Visconti? Chenese? Esposito? Sadi? Cabo? Basso?
Present.
Rotella? Here. Deeds? Keisholtz? Mr. Ryden? Here. Saraceno? Seabury? Here. Stanley? Haversack? Here. Let the record reflect that there are 20 present, 1 absent. Mrs. Keisholtz is still out on medical leave. Start off with number 1, police pension revisions. And at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Pitcher or Mr. Mayor Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate your indulgence. I just wanted to correct for the record, and certainly let the council know that I'm not sure where, with all due respect to Mr. Foley, where he came up with this notion that I made a directive that we not compensate the retirees. In fact, I have no idea. Frankly, what he's talking about, and Mr. Sellner is absolutely correct, that I was not at the table. In fact, specifically stayed away from negotiations to let the union and the city negotiators kind of resolve a lot of these issues. part of that reason is that negotiations are a flow. There's an ebb and tide to them, and there's proposals that are brought up that don't happen, then 2 months later they're revisited, and so it really isn't probably good practice for the mayor to sit in specifically on negotiations until we get to the very end where we're actually tying up the last few knots. And so I just wanted to be clear about that. The second thing I just want to note is Saran Murray is here with us from our labor attorney who actually negotiated this impact agreement. And these are not our standard full-blown negotiations for a contract. These are the impact of the chief's reorganization. I think Mr. Sellner said it very well when he said, look, the active duty personnel are being impacted because we're going from 6 captains to 3 captains, we're reducing the number of lieutenants. Those promotional opportunities are gone, hence the higher increase in their salary. And so that was really the genesis of where we came up with some of the agreements here, but Attorney Murray certainly can give us a little bit bigger overview, but I certainly want to assure the council that I would never tell anybody that we were not seeking to compensate a group of retirees. I'd also say to you that we have a signed affidavit from the 1985 negotiations where a very similar situation occurred, and the past practice has been that the retirees are not compensated when there is an impact over reorganization taking place at the police station or in the police department. It didn't happen in 1985, and certainly that's one of the reasons why we're not doing it now. And then thirdly, there was mention about having 2 separate pension plans. I need not remind the council that right now we have the post-83 pension plan, the 67 pension plan, and both of those pension plans have different levels of benefit for our officers. Part of what we've been trying to do over the last 5 years is correct that level of benefit through the arbitration decision that you see in front of you that came back toward us and through these negotiations. I want to commend Mr. Sellner and Mike Farrell and the entire police union for coming together with the city and really working out this agreement over the last 11 months. It's a real testament to their wanting to work together for the betterment of the department. And what this does is correct an inadequacy in the 83 pension fund that exists for many, many years. And so we're pretty proud of it and the work that went into that. With that, with your indulgence, Mr. President, I'd like to ask Ms. Murray to come up and just kind of give us a kind of an overview and address some of the issues that were raised by Mr. Foley.
Thank you, members of the council, for hearing me. I hope I can assist you as you review these proposed changes to the police pension ordinances tonight. I was the spokesperson for the city in the recently concluded impact negotiations to which Mr. Sellner referred and the mayor referred. I think it might be helpful if I walked you through the ordinance changes and told you where they come from, because not all of them, in this case, do come from those negotiations. First of all, we have, I'll take them in order, Section 1449. Again, in Section 1449, there are 2 proposed changes. The first relates to the amount of the employee contributions to the pension fund. You see that in 1449B. And the second is a new paragraph E, which expressly permits the city to charge the expenses of administering both pension funds, 67 and 83, to the pension fund. And this is a practice which is common and in the private sector, common in most public sector pension plans. It simply had not been codified here in Danbury, and we had to negotiate it with the union to be sure that there would be no dispute. Now, both of these changes result from the previously negotiated collective bargaining agreement. These 2 changes in 1449 were not part of the impact negotiations. The first one regarding the contributions and the second one regarding the cost associated with administering the funds come out of the March 15, 2006 interest arbitration award. The arbitration that ensued when the city and the union could not reach agreement on the original 2002-2006 contract. Now, this council had 25 days after that arbitration award to reject it, and it was not rejected. Thank goodness. Having had a couple of tentative agreements rejected by the union, I'm happy that you didn't reject this one. So at this point, putting these changes into the ordinance is simply editorial and is a ministerial act on your part. The same is true with respect to the new language of section 1452. 1452C has a proposed new paragraph which provides for post-retirement adjustments for those who retire under the post-83 pension plan. This is the exact language that was awarded by the arbitrators on March 15th of 2006. And under the law, specifically the Municipal Employee Relations Act, that arbitration award is fully in effect now and cannot be modified by the city or the union unilaterally. There would have to be another negotiation to change this language of section 1452. And I'm going to come back to 1452 in a minute because Mr. Foley referenced it specifically. But just to continue walking through these changes. 1454 is the third section of the ordinance which has a change in it. This change, which provides the opportunity for those retiring with 25 years or more of service, after this is adopted, of course, comes right out of the agreement reached concerning the impact of the reorganization of the police department. And you heard Mr. Sellner refer to the fact that as part of this reorganization, many of the more senior police officers are going to be required to perform more duty on the road. They are going to be out on patrol. The desk jobs, including the front desk, dispatching, clerk's work, court liaison, some of the evidence and property functions, not all of them, will now be done or will gradually be turned over to civilians through attrition. So because some of those senior police officers are not going to have the opportunity to have less strenuous work in their final years, it was appropriate both to compensate them for those final years through a pension provision such as this, but also we wanted to provide an incentive for those officers to stay. Now, I heard someone at the public hearing talk about the fact that your officers should have good salaries and benefits. And this is an example of where the city and the union, I think, reached a really appropriate balance in that regard. This section will cost money. It is a benefit to the officers. On the other hand, it will redound to the benefit of the city by encouraging people to stay for the full 25 years and not leave the department. And also, we hope it will reduce the rate of disability retirements because people will have an incentive under this provision to work out their careers and not leave early. That's the whole purpose of 1454. 1455 also includes changes that were expressly negotiated between the city and the union as part of the impact negotiations that were recently concluded, which you approved on March 19th of 2007. I always found it a little ironic that the approval of this new agreement took place just almost exactly a year after the arbitration award. One is March 06, one's March 07. The 1455 changes, again, were negotiated with the union, and you approved the agreement between the city and the union on March 19th of 07, and therefore that agreement is, to use the vernacular, a done deal. If you had not wanted these changes in 1455 to occur, you would have had to vote to reject the agreement on March 19th of 06. So again, to some degree, or to actually to a full degree, your actions in approving these ordinance changes are editorial, ministerial, however you want to put it. You really don't have any choice but to approve them now, since you've already approved the agreement that was reached in March of 07, and you've accepted the arbitration award that was rendered in March of 06. I do want to speak expressly, however, to Mr. Foley's concern about the current retirees. First of all, the existing ordinance language, which provides for the post-retirement adjustments in the post-67 plan, is not being changed by the proposed ordinance changes here. The ordinance from previous to these changes and the ordinance with these changes will still provide that pensions, including Mr. Foley's pension, shall be increased to correspond to any increase in salary received by members of the same grade and rank of such member while in active service. The problem with respect to Mr. Foley's argument is that he's arguing for a benefit that did not exist, for a grade and rank that did not exist when individuals who were employed prior to March of 2007 were working. Now, it is also not correct that any of retirees or widows who retired prior to March of '07 will lose their post-retirement adjustments. That's simply not true. On July 1 of 2007, when all members of the police department receive a 3% general wage increase, all past retirees in the post-67 plan will receive that 3% adjustment. Those in the post-83 plan who retired after March 15th of '06 will get a different cost of living adjustment, but that's, as I said, something that was awarded by the arbitrators, and I don't believe Mr. Foley is objecting to that. The bottom line is that nobody is losing anything to which they are entitled under the existing ordinance or the proposed ordinance. The changes in this ordinance are designed to reflect the changes that were negotiated for people who are here now. And we fully concur with Mr. Sellner's assessment that we specifically negotiated to compensate individuals who will be performing different duties than they were prior to the reorganization of the police department, and to compensate officers. In fact, the language we negotiated specifically says we're going to compensate them in part for the loss of promotional opportunities. We are reducing the number of captains in the police department. Instead of having a captain as the shift commander of each shift, there will be one captain of patrol. There will be fewer lieutenant positions as some of these duties that are being civilianized occur. There will be fewer dispatchers and supervisors of dispatchers. And under the law, the Municipal Employee Relations Act, the city had a duty to bargain with the union with the union over the impact of those changes on terms and conditions of employment, which included pay, certainly, and benefits. The parties bargained in good faith, reached an agreement, and I hope that you will see fit to approve the editorial changes in the pension ordinances that are designed to reflect that agreement and the arbitration award that occurred over a year ago. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Okay.
Thank you. Through the chair to Attorney Murray. When we first voted on the police pension contract, it's hot in here. This was all included in that.
1452 is the result of the arbitration award from March of 2006. So it was not before you when you, or it was not part of the impact agreement that was just negotiated. It's part of a prior award.
Why was it not part?
Because it was not renegotiated.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Who gave, and I may be wrong in this, but I'm under the impression that when there's a pension, whether it be police or fire or whomever, I was under the impression that it took both sides on a vote to open a pension to be voted on or to be changed. I'd like to know who gave the police negotiating team the right to go into this pension.
Well, here's how negotiations generally proceed on both sides. By law, the mayor is the chief executive officer of the city, and he appoints a negotiating committee to represent him in negotiations. The union does the same thing. My understanding is that they, in fact, elect the members of their executive board, and either that board or an elected negotiating committee goes to the table for the union. The first thing that occurs is that the parties reach what we call a tentative agreement that is subject to ratification. And in this particular situation, the union took the agreement back to its membership, and ratification was voted by the union membership. I don't recall all of their bylaws. If Mr. Sellner is still here, perhaps he can help us. But I know that it has to be at least a majority vote of the union membership to approve the agreement. And on the city side, the tentative agreement was presented to you on March 19th of 2006, and it's my understanding that it was unanimously ratified by the union council.
Thank you. Could I have a follow-up to Mr. Selman, please?
Mr. Scott, in response to your question, a couple of things that come. The voting packet which was brought back by us, the negotiating committee, which, by the way, is a committee of people appointed by the president, who is elected by the members, was ratified 115 votes to 13. So that's one of the most overwhelmingly positive votes we've ever had.
Can I just stop him right there?
Sure.
That vote that you just mentioned, did that vote include opening negotiations on the pension?
The vote that we took was to ratify the agreement that was reached between the committee of the union and the committee of the city.
It would be unfair labor practice for the union to come to the bargaining table and refuse to talk about anything that was a mandatory subject to bargaining just because their membership hadn't voted to allow them to do that.
I think, if I may, I'm going to make an inference here from your question regarding who gave the police half of the table the right to open the pension policy. The reason we're here tonight is because there's some concern on the part of the retirees and their pension issues. Their pension was not touched at all. Nobody even looked at it with a crossed eye. It was not addressed, it was not talked about, it wasn't even mentioned. All we did was address the current pension, all current employees, most current employees, and some employees who still are under Mr. Foley's pension, yet still work here. There are about 35, give or take one or two, employees of the police department, warrant officers or of rank, who still work here and will collect under the same pension plan as Mr. Foley and other retirees here today. That pension was not touched, and many of those members voted to ratify this deal which we reached at the table. So that pension, we didn't go to the table to open up their contract, their pension. We only opened up the pension which affected the people, most of the majority of the people were there then. And those people did want us to do that, overwhelmingly so. And we did. And that's what we did.
So, one more, please. So
Basically, we didn't take anything from the existing pension plan of the retirees and some of the current employees. All we did was give something to the latter half of the employees, the post-83 plan, which was deficient in its benefit. You understand what I'm saying? We didn't take anything from A and give it to B. We just took something from another area, whatever, general fund, is my understanding. So the city basically decided it was worth it to take a little extra money and use the vernacular, throw it at the post-83 pension plan, which is what they did. So nothing was taken from the post-67 plan. Something was given to the post-83 plan, but it did not come from the post-67 plan. Does that help answer?
it does. So just to clarify, so then the retirees that are sitting there and others that aren't unfortunately present here this evening, their pension checks are not going to change at all. Am I correct in that?
No, they will change. They will still get their raises every year.
No, I mean that. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Benefits will not change.
Benefit has not changed for them at all.
Thank you.
There we go. All costs, this would be section 1449E. All costs associated with the administration of the three pension funds shall be charged to the pension funds. All, that's a pretty big word, all. How is that determined? How do you keep from exposing the pension to runaway costs? Is there a cap on this? Is the union comfortable with that?
Well, there are a couple of things in response, and then I'll let Mr. Selman respond. First of all, I want to point out that this is one of those provisions that, as I said to you before, came out in 2006 arbitration. So it wasn't part of the recently concluded negotiations. But there are certain controls on this, and they are as follows. First of all, you'll see that there's a sentence in here that says, such costs include but are not limited to, and gives examples. Now, even though it's not limited to those specific things, there's a principle in ordinance or statutory or contract construction that requires that anything that's not listed be at least of the same character or the same type of thing that is listed when you give a list of examples like this. For example, you'll notice that there aren't any salaries included in this list of examples. And if the city tried to, or the pension board tried to add the salary of 2 people in the finance department to this list, they would not, that would be an improper construction of the ordinance under generally accepted principles of statutory construction. I'll skip the Latin terms. If anybody wants it, I'll give it to you later.
I had 3 years of Latin 1, so you can.
How about a justem generis?
Go ahead.
The second control on it is that, as you know, there is a pension board for each of the pension plans. And the members of the pension plans have significant membership on those boards. And there is a public member on each of the boards. And therefore, if anything was getting out of whack on either side of the table, that would be something that the pension boards would have the authority to put the brakes on. I noticed that Mr. Johnson is here, and he used to be a member of the fire pension board, and I believe he could speak to the fact that the pension boards keep a pretty close eye on the administration of these funds, and they take very seriously their fiduciary duty to be sure that they are not ill spent.
Thank you. Through the chair to the union. Stewart, President.
Are we happy with the law which?
Exactly.
Happy enough? How's that? Negotiations is give and take. We went to the table, we worked out a deal. We got something we thought was fair, be able to hear. I mean, that was issues arbitration anyway. So we had, that was already on, that wasn't even on the table at the time. That was something that was handed to us by the gracious gentleman. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
So I don't have a problem with it personally. I think many guys have a problem. We know that the pension fund is solvent. It's in black as well. So, and these aren't major costs that we're talking about, at least in the past, until this point in time. Nothing major has come out. We're talking about the minor costs of just administrative pensions, payment of doctor's fees for final, medical advice, final exams, that type of thing. So these aren't big costs. And I haven't seen big costs associated with this. So sure, I mean, we're happy with that. That's pretty sure.
Okay.
There are a lot of things here that we talked about at the table. Since you brought up already happened, if you want to get down to it, we agreed to language in this packet, which you're looking at tonight, which significantly limits the ability for someone to take advantage of the city. There's language in here now, which was never here before. The city insisted on it. Homes and we're okay. If you want that, we have to do this negotiation. They wanted language which would inhibit the ability of someone to fraudulently or not in the best of faith take a disability pension from the city. Someone who has, say, perhaps a minor injury could easily be fixed with some minor surgery. They wanted the right to say, look, try and get the surgery. See if you can come back to work. We thought, well, we didn't have it then. Giving them a benefit? Yes, but we're getting something we feel is fair. So, with those things in mind, it was all give and take. I think both parties got something to the table, and I think both parties are happy with that. My side of that, I can't speak for the city. They'll speak for the city.
Bring around 1 second. Mr.
Yeah,
Did I answer your question sufficiently?
You did. I just have a follow-up briefly, if I may. You mentioned 35 employees were still working from the old pension, but they're still here, and the majority of them voted for this agreement.
Well, I cannot tell you which one of them.
I don't want to know which one. Can you give me a percentage? It was over 50%, but it was at 51 or more like 80%? Was it?
Here's how it works. Let me explain how it works. There are a total of 100, at the time of the vote, there were 150 something, 58, maybe 56 union members eligible to vote on this one. 128 of them voted. All right? 128 voted. There always a certain percentage of them. We all know that as well. So having 128 people come to the poll vote was for us huge. We didn't even expect that because it just replaces the amount of 128 people, 150 voted yes. Now I know personally a lot of people in the poll 67 plan were very enthusiastic about this stuff. A couple of them voiced concerns, but most of them that I talked to and talked to me, very happy. Can I tell you who voted which way? I cannot do that because you voted.
I wouldn't ask you to. I'm just wondering if you happen to know of the 35 what the percentage was that voted for. You did state that more of them did than didn't.
More than did.
You do know that, but
Only 13 people in total voted against the agreement. Even if all of those people.
sure, it would still be about 2/3. Right.
Are the 13 who voted against it, we still got.
All right, that's fine. Thank you very much, both of you.
Mr. Riley?
Mr. Sullivan, please.
As I understand it, please correct me if I'm wrong, you as the president of the Vice President, okay, thank you. You and your negotiating team are voted into that position by your peers?
The members of the fund who are actually voted in the position there were three of us. The way it works is our bylaws require that the members should vote for the board, if you will. The 5 board members, the treasurer, secretary, vice president, they are all elected. The president, in time of negotiation, will appoint a negotiating committee, and it will consist of, and there are rules, you need to have members of control, a member of the executive bureau, members of rank, etc. So he satisfied all those requirements under our bylaws. One of the members of the committee was a post-67 pension member, as it happens, and he signed off on it, being a post-67 member.
So needless to say, when you spoke so elegantly before, when you come before this council, basically you're coming and speaking for your peers, speaking for the rank and file or the file, whomever, and you're being very positive about this particular ordinance.
I am. I'm not going to say that we have no dissenters.
Absolutely.
We do have dissenters. We always have dissenters. There are 13 people who voted no. Maybe half of those were adamant about it. The other half, I don't know. Maybe it was Friday no, I don't know. But, there are dissenters, but this is an overwhelming confirmation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Seabury?
Thank you, Mr. President. I need a question answered by whomever, and I'll direct it through you. Thank you. If the union voted overwhelmingly and the city negotiating team voted in favor of it, and they've come to an agreement, and I believe it was last month we voted in favor of that agreement, could you explain to me why and I don't mean any disrespect, can you explain to me why we're doing this since it's already to use your words, a done deal, so to speak? Why aren't we just accepting this ordinance?
Well, it's my opinion that you are duty-bound to accept these changes. I believe that the Corporation Counsel's office wanted to be sure that there was the blessing of the council to include these provisions in the actual code of ordinances. But even if they were not in there, they would be in effect.
I think to add to that is that just part of our discussion, our due diligence, and what we do with our ordinances when they come before us in the committee of the whole. Mr. Sadi?
Thank you, Mr. President. The main issue here, I think, that's dragged this conversation on, I think, for good reason, is confusion. There was confusion when the agreement was brought before this council as to what the impacts were going to be of these various provisions. There's a lengthy transcript of the discussion at the special meeting about this, and many of these questions were put forward, and many of them were not answered at that time, so we voted on an agreement while not having all the answers. I respectfully disagree with Council Attorney Murray with respect to what the obligations are of this body. This is a legislative body. This act of voting for passage of an ordinance or voting against passage of an ordinance is codified within our charter. It is a legislative act. Personally, I believe that it then allows us to not consider it ministerial and to vote your conscience, as I hope you all do. That being said, it seems that the cart was before the horse. I think Councilman Seabury has drawn that out as others, that we voted on something, we're asked to vote on something with verbal assurances without the very detailed and excellent, I think, explanation we've received here tonight, whether we agree or disagree with it. That being said, I have a few questions through the chair, if I may, to Attorney Murray or whoever may field them, in particular with regard to the issues, and rather than getting into a bunch of citations to sections and the like, just try to do it in as simple and lay terms as possible. Is there anything in any of these ordinances that where there is a cross-reference from any of the existing pension funds to any of the ordinance changes here that will affect those pension funds in any way?
There is no impact at all on the post-67 pension plan benefits. The post-67 plan is affected by the provision that allows the charging of expenses to the pension funds. It is not affected substantively in any way.
Thank you. It was put to me, if I may continue, Mr. President, that there is, with regard to the negotiated impact provisions, I think as Vice President of the Union, Selma, pointed out, that there were some benefits accorded to the union, to the current union members because of the impact the reorganization of the police department will have on them. They'll have less opportunity for certain things, as you also stated in your remarks. Is there anything with regard to, I think it was a 5% increase, if I'm correct, or a certain percentage of increase in salaries, or that the current membership of the police department will receive, that is not tracked with regard to the pension funds? As I understand the pension funds, there's references within the pension funds to tracking compensation and other items that are given to current police officers of same grade and pay scale. I'm trying to put my hands around that issue, and I'm having trouble with it.
All right.
You could
Let me
please
help
explain that.
to it. One of the things that the parties agreed to compensate officers for the loss of promotional opportunities was a new grade, a new step on the pay plan. And in order to achieve that grade, you obviously have to be here now, working to earn it, and you have to work in that rank for at least 11 years. And the mayor referenced earlier a situation that occurred in 1985 that was somewhat parallel. In the 1985 negotiations, which I believe Mr. Foley was a part of, the parties agreed to add a new step, a new grade to each rank. And when that was added, those who had already retired and who had never achieved that grade did not receive a post-retirement adjustment related thereto.
Let me follow up. I understand it better, and I have a few more comments and questions, but the mayor, I believe, made reference to an affidavit. Is there a copy that would be available, made part of the record, and may I see it, please? With the indulgence of the president, if they could be distributed. And while it's going on, if I may, Mr. President, continue. So if I understand this correctly, it's like if I'm a lieutenant or a captain and I did my 15 years and there was 2 levels, Captain 1 and Captain 2. I did 15 years, I leave as a Captain 2. Now, under this new plan, with the reorganization, the impact, there may be a Captain 3. Since that didn't exist when I was there, and I didn't have the opportunity to become a Captain 3, even though I stayed 15 years, if after being a Captain 2 for 11 years, that person has made a captain 3. You're telling me that the person that served as a captain 2 for 15 years who now is retired would not receive an increase in their pension benefit based on captains now being able to go to grade 3?
That is correct. It happens to be grade 4, but
Grade
you're right.
Notwithstanding the number of years, even if they serve the exact same number of years.
What you need to be sure to remember is that this has not focused just on years or seniority. This is focused on compensating people for changes in duties and compensating people for loss of promotional opportunities.
I understand the issue, the impact. I just want to just fundamentally understand it as it functions, not the purpose necessarily behind it, but the actual function of it. Is, as I stated, is that function correct? As I
You are
stated?
correct. If you retired prior to these changes and you only achieved step 3 because that was the top of the line at that point in time, then your pension will always be based on step 3.
Is there any further comments right now? Thank you, Mr. President.
Anybody else wishing to make a comment? Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Chair. Attorney, Section 1449, Set B, would that be considered the cost of living adjustment? Yes.
1449B is the amount of the employee contribution to the pension fund for the post-83, both of them actually, 367 and post-83.
Where could we find the cost of living adjustment in this?
In 1452.
So it's 2% for the pre-1967 employees?
No, it's not 2%. The pre-67 employees continue to receive whatever across-the-board increases are granted to the people in the same grade and rank that they held at the time of retirement. So if I was a police officer step 4 when I retired, then each time a police officer step 4 gets a wage increase, a general wage increase, I would get that general wage increase. So for example, this July 1 of '07, there's an across-the-board increase of 3% for everybody, and all of the 67 plan retirees will get that. Now, in 1983, when the new pension plan was negotiated, that provision was eliminated for people in the 1983 plan. So until 2006, there was no provision at all for post-retirement adjustments for individuals who retired under the post-83 plan. That's the part that's new. But it's only the 83 plan that has a new, what we call generally cost of living adjustment, although it's not really cost of living. It could be more or less depending on the year.
Okay, so you're saying 3% for the pre-67, as it was then, it still is now.
Yes.
And
For those in the 83 plan who've retired since the arbitration award in '06, their COLA after completion of 5 years of retirement is 2%. So it's a much more restricted post-retirement adjustment for those in that plan.
okay, thank you.
Could I just, I'm sorry, I think that's your question.
But, did you want to?
When you're finished, I just wanted to talk about Mr. Sally's comment.
Just see who else wants to make a comment. Mr. Sadi for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Following up on my previous questions through the chair to council, which particular ordinance and which section is the language contained in with regard to that additional step? Where would that?
That's not a matter of ordinance, that's in the collective bargaining agreement itself.
And within any of these ordinances, is there any language that would cross-reference to that? Where would that be found?
There's no cross-reference to the collective bargaining agreement per se, no, not that I'm aware of.
Where would the language be that has that cross-reference with regard to tracking the underlying pay for particular rank and the particular steps?
It's in 1452 in the current provision.
1452C?
Yes. Do you have the one that has the new language in capital letters?
I do.
Okay. It's the sentence in the old, the first paragraph that's not changed, just before that new language. It's the language that says the pension shall not thereafter be reduced, but shall be increased to correspond to any increase in salary received by members of the same grade and rank of such member while in active service. So the grade and rank that you had at the time of retirement is what counts.
No, very clear. I want to make sure that I understand that. And so then any change in language would have to be done, I'm not saying it's possible, would have to have been something within the actual agreement itself, and either preventing the establishment of a new grade in order to avoid the final result here of having higher pay grades within a certain rank where the pensionees won't have an increase that will track that.
Not sure I understand the question. Do you mean that the council would have to prohibit the city from agreeing to new grades?
I'm asking to understand that. So the only way to do this.
You can't do that.
I didn't say whether we could.
Yeah.
Saying functional. It would have to have been something that was done within the negotiations with regard to the impact and the establishment of a new grade or additional grades.
Additional grades must be established by collective bargaining, yes, because they relate to wages.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Anybody know Mr. Stevens?
I just wanted to respond a little bit to Mr. Sadie's comment about the fact that I seem to be denigrating the power of the legislative body here, and that's not my intent. I'm just trying to be sure that you understand that once you've approved a collective bargaining agreement, you can't go back and take that away. In fact, there are even some cases where after a legislative body voted on a contract, it happened to be a police contract in the city of Waterbury, the mayor decided that he really didn't understand the agreement when he submitted it, and so he vetoed the vote, and the alderman tried to take another vote to disapprove it. It happened to be a pension issue, by the way, that cost a huge amount of money. And the courts eventually ruled that once the alderman had voted to approve that agreement, they could not go back on their word. You could be right, and I apologize if you feel you didn't have full information at the first hearing, or the first meeting about this.
Thank you.
Do better next time.
Perkins for the second time.
I think a lot of the council members are concerned. This is a very complex issue. I mean, you can just look at the front row. 5 out of the 7 people sitting there are all attorneys. So, you can kind of imagine how we feel. I just still not comfortable with some of the information I've received, and I just still really don't have a grasp of the impact that this may have on some of the retirements. So I'm going to vote no for this ordinance.
I do want you to know, Mr. Perkins, that I've said on the record already, and I will reiterate to you and to Mr. Foley, that this ordinance provision will not in any way take any benefits away from individuals who have already retired.
Mr. Nagershed? We hear you up front, but people in the back know.
My wife tells me, quiet, don't shout. You know, just to echo what she said, she being attorney, Marie, you know, nothing was taken from them, and this may be a little off point, but their pension benefit remains significantly more lucrative than the pension benefit we are talking about here tonight. So while the post-83 pension plan has received improvements, be they monetary or otherwise, that still does not bring that pension plan into line with the pension plan, which is the post-67 pension plan we're talking about, and the concerns of Mr. Foley and his retirees, people, a lot of people I know, their pension plan remains more lucrative. I can't say it any way I said it, I won't say it. You understood what I said? It's the truth. The numbers will speak. If you want to do them, they said, he can provide them, will provide them. That pension plan is still more lucrative and remains so, even after this particular package that you have before you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nagerson? Can you use the microphone, please? Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the council at its next regularly scheduled meeting adopt this ordinance as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Saraceno. Any other discussion on this?
Thank you. Am I correct that if we vote for this tonight, this will go in front of the full council again in May? Is that correct? Or we will again be voting for it? So conceivably, we could approve it tonight and disapprove it in May, or vice versa. Is that possible?
I think you have the ability to vote yes or no tonight, and I believe you have the ability to vote yes or no in May as well.
So if people needed more information and they weren't comfortable, they could expect to receive some in the next couple of weeks. Is that correct? Thank you.
Mr. Nagerson, could you please repeat your motion just a little bit louder? It wasn't very well.
Yeah, making a recommendation that the council adopt this ordinance at its next regularly scheduled meeting as presented.
Ordinances.
Ordinances.
Thank you, Mr. Nagerson. That was seconded by Mrs. Saraceno. And seeing no further discussion, I'll try your minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, signify by saying no. Nay. With the noes, please raise your hand. For the record, would you let the record reflect that Mr. Visconti, Mr. Perkins, Mr. Esposito, Mr. Slattery, and Mr. Rapello are voting negatively? And are there any abstentions? And please let the record reflect that Mrs. Tarasak is